What's happening in Burundi is of great concern to us. We're looking for a political solution so that we don't see more people with the need to flee from Burundi. It's really a human rights crisis. It's a protection crisis. I think there is a real fear. There is increased violence, and there is a perception that persecution could take root relatively quickly. Some of those refugees that are going to neighboring countries have been in those neighboring countries before and returned successfully. So it's quite disturbing that families would feel the need to flee again in terms of trying to find safety and assistance in the countries of refuge. But because of what's happening in Burundi, I think we have to be prepared for far more people fleeing. From our side, from the humanitarian perspective, it's very important that each of those countries keep their borders open, which they have. One of the steps taken by the Tanzanian president recently was to naturalize about 164,000 Burundians from 1972 who had arrived, are now new Tanzanian citizens. And so now, of course, the international community, the pressure is on to help, obviously, the government solidify, anchor, and make sure that those new citizens are able to provide for themselves, but the early signs are quite good. One of the positive opportunities that we've seen in the neighboring countries is an approach where we would look at development, sustainable approaches in the earliest stages of flight, so that we're not doing a traditional emergency response in some areas, particularly in Uganda and to some extent also in Rwanda. Donors have been quite generous, partners have been generous in terms of looking at this, unfortunately, as not necessarily a quick and short time frame in terms of people being in those neighboring countries, and to try to inject ways where families can actually support themselves, where they have freedom of movement, where they're able to contribute to the economies of the neighboring countries. What we have seen, for example, in Uganda, and again to some extent in the other neighbors, would show that a new approach to emergency response could actually take root in this part of the world, and we could model it elsewhere. At the same time, again, we've got very strong cooperation from the World Bank. They are providing a loan to the Tanzanian government, which will help in terms of the infrastructure and other ways to, again, bring economic advantage to that part of Tanzania. The ability to move freely and the ability to contribute to the economy is essential. Really looking at markets and economic opportunities is the first step. Self-reliance then would follow.